Now, I'd like to finish, words you probably wanted to hear for a bit, by telling you about a cockerel called Yvette. Is that all right? Yeah? We were given what were described as half a dozen free-range French farmyard chicken eggs. And one of our chickens, who was called Satan, for reasons that I can't go into, anyway, Satan was broody, so we shoved 6 of these eggs underneath her, and 3 of them hatched, 2 brown ones and a white one. Now, there are various ways of sexing chicks when they're a few days old. One, apparently, is to chuck a hat over them. Yeah. Apparently the girls duck, and the boys go, "Come on then." I read it in a book, so it must be true. We just waited until they got a bit bigger. All 3 of them seemed to be female, and the 2 white ones were a little more boring, so we gave those away, and we kept the brown one. We christened it Yvette. Yvette became huge and dyspraxic, which is very clumsy, ricocheting around the run, and once her stepmother's maternal hormones had been switched off, she started to view this bird in a less than loving manner and started to peck it, which caused it to become more hysterical and collide with things even more. And one morning I noticed it was limping. So I separated it, and after about a week it couldn't even stand up. So I took Yvette to the vet. It's quite hard to say. The vet said, "Well, maybe it's pulled a muscle. I can't see anything obviously wrong with it. Just see how you get on." Anyway, after a fortnight, it was worse. It had been sitting in its own muck, and its underside was red and sore. And it was using its beak to sort of propel itself along the ground. Well, I'm too soft to stretch necks, but I could see that the animal was suffering. I thought, we're keeping it alive for the wrong reason. So I phoned the vet up and said, "I'm sorry, I've got one for dispatch." So I took Yvette back to the vet in a cardboard box, got her out of the cardboard box. The vet produced the syringe of doom and loomed over the chicken, who at the last moment got to her feet and staggered back into the box like this. And the vet said, "That animal has spirit. Give it another chance." This is where things get a bit weird. My office had a beam across the ceiling. I got some string, a pair of scissors, and an old floral shirt. And I made a kind of chicken baby bouncer arrangement out of this. Put some newspaper on the floor, posted the reluctant chicken into this thing, and slung the string over the beam, and we then began the chicken physiotherapy. You see, and I was doing a lot of business journalism. I was phoning up lots of company car fleet managers in places like Basingstoke, and my office was a kind of shed in the garden. I thought, if these men in suits could see me in my shed with the chicken on the end of a piece of string, I should never work again. But I mean, she could stand up for a few seconds in her chicken nappy, then the legs would go sideways and she would pirouette slowly and self-consciously, you see. But we gradually built this up, and every so often I would haul on the string to get her right off the ground, and I'd cycle the legs so the muscles wouldn't atrophy. And after a bit, she could stand up unaided. She could stand up for hours at a time. The only thing was, she'd forgotten how to walk. I thought, well, never mind, I'll put her outside. She's a very greedy bird. I thought she'll soon learn. So I put her outside. But I'll show you this. And so I'd go in and work for a couple of hours, and I'd come out and I'd find her like this. Exactly where I'd left her. So I would get a handful of raisins and hold them just out of pecking range and shout encouragement. I mean, goodness knows what the neighbours thought with this idiot going, "Come on," to this stationary chicken. Anyway, after a bit, she lunged at the raisins and fell over, but it was a start. Then she lunged and took a step and fell over. And in the end, she did walk again. The only thing was that her knees had seized up. So she goose-stepped everywhere. Yeah. We had a National Socialist chicken goose-stepping round the garden, wrenching my wife's bulbs out of the flower beds. And we thought, well, it's greedy, it's ugly, and it goose-steps. But it'll lay wonderful eggs, and we've saved it. Now, by this stage, I was working in London. We put it back in with the others, who fell upon it with the enthusiasm of seasoned playground bullies, which I think turned out to be a mistake.